The dawn broke softly over Burkina Faso, painting the savannah in hues of gold and crimson. The land of upright men stirred to life, its plains dotted with acacia trees and baobabs, standing like ancient sentinels. In distant villages, roosters crowed, and the air carried the earthy scent of red soil mingled with the faint sweetness of shea blossoms. Weaver birds darted through the sky, their songs weaving a melody that seemed to herald something extraordinary. On this morning, May 12th, 2025, the winds of fate were stirring, ready to etch a story into the heart of a nation. A sleek convoy of black vehicles sliced through the countryside, their tires humming against a sun-scorched highway winding toward Ouagadougou, the capital. The procession was a marvel of precision. Armored SUVs flanked by military jeeps, motorcycles weaving in tight formation, and at the center, a fortified limousine bearing the emblem of Burkina Faso. Dust swirled in their wake, a testament to their urgency. This was no ordinary journey. It carried the hopes of a nation on the shoulders of one man. Inside the limousine, President Ibrahim Traoré sat immersed in a stack of documents. At 36, he was a striking figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a neatly trimmed beard framing a face both resolute and weary. His deep green bubu, embroidered with gold threads, spoke of tradition, while his piercing eyes betrayed a soldier's vigilance. Traoré had risen to power 3 years prior, leading a coup that ousted a corrupt regime and earning him both adoration and scrutiny. To many, he was a symbol of Burkina Faso's rebirth, a leader who championed the poor, defied foreign influence, and dreamed of a prosperous future. Traoré glanced at his watch, its silver face glinting in the dim light. 2 hours, he said, his voice steady but urgent. We must reach the capital in 2 hours. This summit is our chance to secure the future. His assistant, Moussa Konate, a bespectacled man with a nervous energy, nodded vigorously. Yes, Your Excellency. The investors are waiting. They've called twice already to confirm your arrival. Then let's not disappoint them, Traoré replied, returning to his papers. The documents outlined a multi-billion-dollar deal to develop Burkina Faso's gold mines and solar energy infrastructure. It was a lifeline for a nation plagued by poverty and conflict, but the investors, representatives from Europe and Asia, were impatient. If Traoré failed to arrive on time, they could redirect their funds to another African country, leaving Burkina Faso to languish. Captain Diallo, the driver, pressed the accelerator, and the limousine surged forward. The convoy moved as one, a steel serpent cutting through the savannah. Guards in the accompanying vehicles sat alert, their rifles at the ready, their eyes scanning the horizon. Burkina Faso's history of insurgencies and political unrest meant security was paramount. The road stretched clear ahead, flanked by golden grasslands and scattered huts, promising a smooth journey. But the spirits of the land had other plans. Hidden in a thicket of thorn bushes, just off the highway, a small figure crouched, her heart pounding. Her name was Amina, though the villagers called her Espoir. Hope for the light she brought to their lives despite her own sorrow. At 5 years old, Amina was an orphan, her parents killed in a rebel attack that had scarred her village 2 years prior. She lived on the outskirts, sleeping under a gnarled mango tree and surviving on millet porridge and mangoes, gifted by kind neighbors. Her dress, once a vibrant blue, was now faded to a dull gray, its hem frayed from endless wandering. Her bare feet were toughened by the earth, her hair a dusty tangle of curls. But her eyes, large, dark, and fierce, held a fire that belied her fragile frame. Amina was no ordinary child. The villagers whispered that she was touched by the ancestors, for her dreams often carried glimpses of truth. The night before, as she lay beneath the stars, a vision had seized her. She saw a great convoy of black vehicles speeding down this road, only to be swallowed by a roaring inferno. At the heart of the flames stood a man in green, his face proud but haunted. A voice, soft yet commanding, echoed in her mind. "Stop them, Amina. Stop them, or they will perish." She had awoken with a gasp, her body trembling. Dawn was still hours away, but she ran to the home of Baba Yaro, the village elder, whose wisdom was revered across the region. Baba Yaro, his face etched with lines of age, listened as Amina recounted her dream. His eyes narrowed, and he placed a gnarled hand on her shoulder. Child, he said, the ancestors speak through the small when the mighty will not hear. If you have seen this, you must act. But beware, the world does not bend easily to a child's voice. Amina nodded, her resolve hardening like iron. She knew the president's convoy would pass this road today. The villagers had buzzed with news of his journey to a grand summit. So she had crept to the highway, her small frame hidden among the bushes, waiting for the moment to fulfill her destiny. Now, as the rumble of engines grew louder, she took a deep breath, her hands shaking but her spirit unyielding. She stepped onto the road, a solitary figure against the oncoming tide. In the lead jeep, Sergeant Traoré, a grizzled veteran with scars crisscrossing his arms, spotted her first. "What's that?" he barked, leaning forward. The driver squinted, then slammed on the brakes. Tires screeched, kicking up clouds of red dust that swirled like a storm. The convoy lurched to a halt, the president's limousine stopping mere meters from the child. "Who dares block the president?" Captain Diallo growled, his hands gripping the wheel. He honked the horn, but the figure stood firm. "It's a girl," Traoré said, his voice tinged with disbelief. He leapt out, rifle in hand, joined by a dozen guards who formed a semicircle around the child. Their uniforms were crisp, their weapons gleaming, but their faces betrayed confusion. Amina stood her ground, her bare feet planted on the hot asphalt. Her tattered dress fluttered in the breeze, and her eyes locked onto the limousine at the convoy's heart. The guards towered over her, their shadows swallowing her small frame, but she did not waver. "Move, child," Traoré shouted. "This is the president's convoy. Do you seek death?" Amina's voice, though soft, cut through the air like a blade. "I must speak to the president. It is urgent." The guards exchanged glances, some chuckling, others scowling. "Speak to His Excellency?" one scoffed. "You're lucky we don't drag you into the bushes." "I will not move," Amina said, her tone resolute. "Not until I see him." Inside the limousine, Traoré set down his documents, his brow furrowing. "What's causing this delay?" he asked Musa. "A child, sir," Musa replied, peering through the tinted window. "She's standing in the road, refusing to move." "A child?" Traoré's curiosity stirred, tinged with irritation. He opened the door and stepped out, his polished boots crunching on the gravel. The guards parted as he approached, his boo-boo billowing in the wind. Musa trailed behind, clutching his tablet nervously. "What is this nonsense?" Traoré demanded, his voice deep and commanding. His gaze fell on Amina, and for a moment he was struck by the intensity in her eyes. She was small, barely reaching his waist, yet she stood with the defiance of a lioness. Amina pointed a trembling finger at him. "You are the one I seek, President Traoré." The guards gasped. Traoré stepped forward, his hand on his rifle. "Show respect, girl. You don't address the president like that." But Traoré raised a hand, silencing him. "Let her speak." He studied Amina, intrigued despite his frustration. "What do you want, child?" "You must not continue this journey," Amina said, her voice steady. "Wait here for 2 hours." The words hung in the air, absurd yet resolute. The guards burst into laughter, their voices echoing across the empty road. Even Musa stifled a chuckle. 2 hours, Traoré mocked. "You want the leader of Burkina Faso to sit here because a street child commands it?" Amina didn't flinch. "If you go now, you will not survive. Danger waits on this road." Traoré's expression darkened. He was a soldier, a man who had faced rebels and assassins without fear. Yet here was a child, barely old enough to read, issuing him an order. "Little one," he said, his tone measured but firm, "I admire your courage, but I have waited years for this summit. It is for the future of our people. I cannot stop." Amina shook her head, her dusty curls bouncing. "A goat does not run in the daytime for nothing. I am not mad. I am not playing. I saw it in my dream. A great fire, cars screaming, people crying. You were in the middle of it. If you go now, you will not return." The guards moved to seize her, but Traoré's hands shot up again. "Wait." He studied her face, searching for deceit. Her eyes were wide, brimming with tears, yet they held a conviction that unsettled him. He turned back to his limousine, his mind racing. "This is foolishness," he muttered, but a seed of doubt took root. As he reached for the door, Amina's voice rang out, sharp and desperate. "Please, sir, I beg you, wait." Traoré froze. He looked back at her, and something in her trembling form, her bare feet, her tattered dress, her unyielding resolve, stirred a memory. As a boy, he had ignored an elder's warning about a coming storm and nearly drowned in a flash flood. The lesson had stayed with him. Wisdom could come from the unlikeliest voices. He sighed deeply and walked back to Amina, crouching to her level. "Who are you, child?" "My name is Amina," she whispered. "They call me Espoir. I have no mother, no father. I sleep by the old well under the mango tree. But I saw this in my dream and I had to stop you." Traoré's heart softened, but his mind rebelled. He was the president, a man of logic and strategy. Yet Amina's words carried a sincerity he couldn't dismiss. He stood, his jaw tight. "Cancel the journey," he said to his guards. "We wait here for 2 hours." The convoy fell silent. Cabaret's mouth dropped open. "Sir?" "You heard me," Traoré snapped. "We wait." And so the most powerful man in Burkina Faso halted his mission on the word of a 5-year-old girl. The sun climbed higher, its rays searing the convoy. The vehicles, now parked in a neat line along the roadside, shimmered in the heat. Guards fanned themselves with their caps, their initial amusement giving way to unease. Some whispered among themselves, casting wary glances at Amina, who sat quietly on a flat stone, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if waiting for the sky to speak. Inside the limousine, Traoré sat in silence, his documents forgotten. He stared at his watch, each tick amplifying his impatience. 30 minutes had passed, and the weight of his decision pressed heavily on him. His phone buzzed incessantly, Musa fielding calls from the investors, their tones growing sharper with each conversation. "Sir," Musa said, his voice trembling as he handed over the phone. "It's Mr. Laurent from the investment group." Traoré took the phone, his expression grim. "Yes?" "Your Excellency," Laurent's voice crackled, clipped and impatient. "This delay is unacceptable. We have other nations eager for this deal. If you're not here in 90 minutes, we'll assume you're not serious." Traoré's grip tightened. "Please, there's been a minor issue. I'll be there soon." "You have 60 minutes, Laurent snapped before the line went dead. Traoré handed the phone back, his face a mask of frustration. He stepped out of the limousine and stormed toward Amina, his boots kicking up dust. The guards watched, tense, as he loomed over the girl. "You," he said, his voice sharp. "I'm losing patience. Why should I trust you? What if this is a trap set by my enemies?" Amina looked up, her eyes calm despite his anger. "I have no enemies, sir. I have only my dream." "Your dream," Traoré scoffed. "I am the president. I lead a nation. How can I let a child's dream stop me?" Amina stood, her small frame barely reaching his chest. She took a deep breath, and her next words silenced the convoy. "Even a lion pauses when the antelope refuses to run. You are strong, sir, like the lion. But danger does not always roar. Sometimes it waits quietly, like a trap in the grass." The guards froze. Musa's tablet slipped from his hands, clattering to the ground. Traoré's breath caught in his throat. The proverb, rooted in the oral traditions of Burkina Faso, struck him like a thunderbolt. He had heard such wisdom from his grandmother, but never with such clarity from a child. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice softer now. Amina stepped closer, her bare feet leaving faint prints in the dust. "A lion is king, but if he chases an antelope that does not flee, he may fall into a hunter's net. You are the lion, sir. The road is the antelope. It looks safe, but it is not. Wait, and you will see." Traoré's heart raced. He looked around, seeing nothing but open road and swaying grass. Yet Amina's words stirred a primal instinct, a warning he couldn't ignore. He turned to his guards. "We wait." No arguments. This time no one protested. The guards dispersed, some taking positions along the road, others resting under the shade of acacias. Musa retrieved his tablet, his hands shaking as he typed a message to the investors, buying time. Amina returned to her stone, her face serene, as if she had fulfilled her purpose. Traoré retreated to his limousine, his mind a whirlwind of doubt and determination. He leaned back, closing his eyes, and let Amina's proverb replay in his head. "Even a lion pauses." He murmured the words, feeling their weight. For the first time in years, the president of Burkina Faso felt small, Not in power, but in the face of something greater. The ancestors, the spirits, or perhaps something divine. Whatever it was, it spoke through this child. An hour passed, then another. The sun reached its zenith, casting harsh shadows across the convoy. The guards, now restless, paced along the road, their rifles slung over their shoulders. The heat was oppressive, and the air buzzed with the hum of cicadas. Amina remained on her stone, her gaze fixed on the sky, as if waiting for a sign from the heavens. Traoré's phone rang again, shattering the silence. Musa answered, his face paling as he listened. "Sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "it's the National Emergency Team." "Put it on speaker," Traoré ordered, stepping out of the limousine. A frantic voice crackled through the phone. "Your Excellency, there's been a catastrophic accident 40 kilometers ahead. A petrol tanker overturned and exploded. The fire spread to dozens of vehicles, buses, cars, motorcycles. It happened an hour ago, right when you would have passed through." The convoy fell deathly silent. Cabaret's rifle slipped from his hands, clattering to the ground. Musa sank to his knees, his tablet forgotten. The guards exchanged wide-eyed glances, their faces pale. "Tell me everything," Traoré demanded, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "Sir," the voice continued, "the explosion was massive. Over 40 vehicles were incinerated. No one survived, not a single soul. The road is blocked, and rescue teams are struggling to contain the fire." Traoré's legs felt weak. He turned to Amina, who sat unmoving on her stone, her expression unchanged. The guards followed his gaze, their earlier skepticism replaced by awe. Slowly, Traoré walked toward her, his steps heavy, as if moving through a dream. The convoy watched in silence as their president knelt before the girl, his boo-boo pooling around him. "You saved my life," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved us all." Amina looked up, her eyes soft but resolute. "It was not me, sir. It was the dream the ancestors gave me." Traoré shook his head. You could have stayed silent. You could have hidden, but you stood here, in front of my convoy, in front of me. You spoke when no one else would." "I was afraid," Amina admitted, her voice barely audible. "But I was more afraid of what would happen if I didn't." Traoré took her small hand in his calloused fingers enveloping her delicate ones. "How many would have the courage to do what you did?" Tears glistened in the eyes of the guards. Cabaret, the gruff sergeant, wiped his face with his sleeve. Musa whispered to another guard, "This is no ordinary child. This is the work of the divine." Traoré stood, still holding Amina's hand. He turned to his team, his voice firm but trembling. "From this moment, this girl is no longer an orphan. She is my daughter. Her name is Amina Espoir, and she will live with me in the presidential palace." The guards erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the savannah. Amina blinked, tears streaming down her dusty cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of belonging. The convoy resumed its journey, but the mood was different now, solemn, reflective. The vehicles moved slowly, as if paying homage to the miracle that had spared them. Amina sat beside Traoré in the limousine, her small frame dwarfed by the leather seat. She clutched the edge of her dress, her eyes wide as she took in the unfamiliar luxury. Traoré watched her, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had faced death many times, but never had he felt so humbled. As they approached Ouagadougou, the capital's skyline came into view, a blend of modern skyscrapers and traditional mud-brick mosques. The presidential palace loomed ahead, its white walls and golden domes gleaming in the afternoon sun. The gates swung open, and the convoy rolled in, greeted by a flurry of staff and security personnel. They froze when they saw Amina, her hand clasped in Traoré's. Inside the palace, Traoré called an emergency meeting in the Grand Hall. Ministers, advisors, guards, and media staff gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Amina stood beside Traoré, her tattered dress a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. The hall, with its marble floors and chandeliers, felt like another world to her. Traoré stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "Today," he began, "I was on my way to a summit that could have transformed our nation. My convoy was moving smoothly, every detail planned. Then a 5-year-old girl stepped out of the bushes and stopped us. Gasps rippled through the room. Traoré raised a hand, continuing. Her name is Amina, but they call her Espoir, hope. She told me to wait 2 hours, that danger lay ahead. I didn't believe her. I almost ignored her. But her words, her courage, her proverbs, they shook me. He recounted the story, the dream, the warnings, the explosion that claimed countless lives. He shared Amina's proverbs, each one resonating with the wisdom of Burkina Faso's ancestors. Even a lion pauses when the antelope refuses to run, he quoted, his voice resonating. A big man who ignores a small warning becomes the loudest cry in the graveyard. The room was silent, save for the soft sobs of a few staff members. Traoré placed a hand on Amina's shoulder. 2 hours later, we learned of the accident. If we had not stopped, I would not be standing here. My guards, my assistant, my team, we would all be gone. This child saved us. He looked at Amina, his eyes glistening. She had no shoes, no family, no power. Yet her voice was louder than my convoy's sirens. From today, she is my daughter. I will raise her, educate her, and protect her. She is not just a child. She is a national treasure, the hope of Burkina Faso. The hall erupted in applause. Amina, overwhelmed, clung to Traoré's hand. She had never known such love, such acceptance. The staff surrounded her, some kneeling to speak to her, others wiping tears from their eyes. The next day, Traoré addressed the nation in a televised broadcast, a moment that would cement the story's place in history. Cameras rolled as he stood on a balcony overlooking the capital, Amina at his side, now dressed in a simple but clean yellow dress. The nation watched, from bustling markets in Bobo Dioulasso to remote villages in the Sahel, as their president told the story of the girl who stopped his convoy. He spoke of her courage, her wisdom, her adoption. He shared her proverbs, each one striking a chord with a people yearning for hope. Even a lion pauses when the antelope refuses to run, he said, his voice carrying across the airwaves. A big man who ignores a small warning becomes the loudest cry in the graveyard. Amina, Espoir, is our reminder that no voice is too small to save a life, no dream too weak to be true, no leader too great to listen. Across Burkina Faso, the response was overwhelming. Old men wept, recalling the wisdom of their griots. Mothers hugged their children, inspired by Amina's bravery. Young people shared her story on social media, her proverbs becoming rallying cries for a new generation. The hashtag #Espoir de Burkina trended worldwide, fueled by viral videos on platforms like YouTube and TikTok. Among those spreading the story was Fatoumata Ouedraogo, a young journalist and YouTube storyteller from Ouagadougou, whose channel, Tales of Burkina, had a modest but growing following. Moved by Amina's courage, Fatoumata produced a video titled, How a 5-Year-Old Girl Saved President Traoré from Death. With dramatic music, vivid animations of the convoy and the explosion, and heartfelt narration, she retold the story, weaving in interviews with palace staff and villagers who knew Amina. At the video's end, Fatoumata looked into the camera, her voice warm but urgent. If this story touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale of courage from Burkina Faso. Let's spread Espoir's story to the world. Fatoumata's video exploded online, garnering millions of views within days. The thumbnail, a silhouette of Amina standing against a fiery sunset, became iconic, and the hashtags Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso ensured it reached audiences far beyond Africa. Comments flooded in, some praising Amina's bravery, others marveling at Traoré's humility, and many quoting her proverbs. This is why Africa will rise, one viewer wrote. A child's dream saved a president, said another. The video's call to action drove engagement, with viewers sharing it across WhatsApp groups, Twitter X threads, and TikTok challenges, where users recited Amina's proverbs in their own languages. The story's universal themes, courage, humility, and the power of the underdog, resonated far beyond Burkina Faso. In Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, people shared Amina's proverbs, likening her to folk heroes like Anansi or Sundiata. In Europe and America, Viewers were captivated by the supernatural element of her dream, comparing it to tales of prophecy and divine intervention. The motif of a child saving a powerful leader tapped into a timeless narrative, evoking biblical stories like David and Goliath, or modern tales like Malala Yousafzai's activism. Traoré's heroic portrayal added fuel to the story's virality. His decision to listen to Amina, to kneel before her, and to adopt her painted him as a leader of unparalleled compassion. In a continent often skeptical of politicians, Traoré emerged as a beacon of hope, his image as a young anti-imperialist leader amplified by the story's spread. Social media posts hailed him as the president who listened, with memes and fan art depicting him and Amina as symbols of Burkina Faso's resilience. The cultural resonance of Amina's proverbs, rooted in African oral traditions, gave the story authenticity and depth. Phrases like, "A goat does not run in the daytime for nothing," echoed the wisdom of griots, connecting listeners to their heritage. These proverbs, simple yet profound, were quoted in churches, mosques, and village gatherings, becoming shorthand for courage and foresight. Their poetic quality made them shareable, appearing in WhatsApp statuses and Twitter threads, further driving the story's reach. The supernatural element, Amina's prophetic dream, added a layer of mystique that captivated audiences. In Burkina Faso, where dreams are often seen as messages from the ancestors, her vision was embraced as divine intervention. Across Africa and beyond, the idea of a child receiving a warning from the heavens struck a chord, evoking awe and wonder. Comments on Fatimata's YouTube video speculated about Amina's gift, with some calling her a modern-day seer, amplifying the story's allure. Amina's new life in the palace was a fairy tale come true, yet she remained grounded. She was given a room filled with books, toys, and a soft bed, the first she had ever known. A tailor crafted her a wardrobe of colorful dresses, each embroidered with patterns inspired by Burkina Faso's tribes. A tutor, Madame Zongo, guided her education, teaching her to read, write, and speak French with confidence. Amina made friends with the children of palace staff, her laughter echoing through the marble halls. Yet she never forgot her roots, often slipping away to the palace gardens to sit under a tree, as she had in her village. When asked how she became the president's daughter, Amina would smile and say, "I spoke what the ancestors showed me." Her humility endeared her to the nation, and her story continued to spread. Journalists flocked to Ouagadougou, interviewing palace staff and villagers who knew her. Fatimata's documentary, Espoir, The Girl Who Saved a Nation, became a global phenomenon. Its call to action, subscribe, like, share, and ring the bell, echoing in countless languages as viewers spread the tale. Years later, Amina stood at a podium in Ouagadougou, now a young woman of 18. She had grown into a poised, intelligent leader, studying law and advocating for orphans across Africa. The nation knew her as Espoir, the girl who saved a president and inspired a generation. At her side stood Traoré, his hair streaked with gray, but his pride in her undimmed. In her speech, Amina shared the lesson that had guided her life. No voice is too small to save a life. No dream is too weak to be true. No leader is too great to listen. Greatness lies not in speaking loudly, but in hearing quietly. The crowd roared, their cheers carrying her words to the heavens. And somewhere, in the winds that swept across the savannah, the ancestors smiled, for they had chosen well. Courage speaks in whispers, wisdom in proverbs, and hope in the heart of a child. To lead is to command, but to live is to listen.